It's about that time of year again. It's time for holiday cheer, a warm cup of cocoa, chilling by the fire, and getting bent over by miHoYo for your new Chi-Chi constellation. Bad gacha rolls never stopped anyone from rolling again though. Most of us with gambling addictions have an insatiable thirst for 3D men and women, and will stop at nothing to collect our waifus and husbandos. Because both you and I lack self-control, we're probably gonna roll in the 2.3 banners. But the question is, which DPS character is a better choice for you to go for? Well, since at the time of this video we don't know Itto's damage scalings, we can't compare raw damage. However, there is much more than a character's raw damage that'll determine a character's worth, such as synergy with other units, free-to-play accessibility, how easy they are to build and get max value out of, and of course, the most important one, aesthetics. There are plenty of things that each character will do differently. Eula's a physical damage character with a cryo element, meaning she has lots of synergies with cryo characters, even if she's not getting the full effects of cryo resonance. Itto, however, is a Geo character that benefits from the juicy shield and damage buff of Geo resonance, deals consistent damage over time, and scales off of defense. To compare these two thirst traps, we're going to be looking at 10 different categories and give each character points based off of which character performs better. At the end, we're going to tally up all the points to give a general idea of which character is better overall value. First up, we're going to look at reactions for 5 points. When the Eula trailer released about 17 years ago, you could say that she shattered my expectations, because I didn't anticipate miHoYo releasing a physical damage carry 5-star. Nobody expected Eula to be great outside of her burst, but due to her being a cryo unit, she sets up the superconduct debuff very easily and benefits from enemies' physical resistance dropping. Meanwhile, Itto swing big sword do big Geo, but doesn't really benefit from the crystallized reaction by much. This isn't as much of an Itto issue as it is a crystallized issue, because crystallized shields deal no damage and scale based off of elemental mastery, which isn't what you'd want to build on Itto anyways. With that being said though, even if the community's reaction to Itto was insane, Eula generally has better in-game reactions to play around with, so this point is going to Eula. Next up, for 10 points, we're going to compare enemy resistances, as in which character worries less about enemies that'll resist their damage. It's no secret that some enemies are a royal pain in the butt because they resist all sorts of damage, but certain damage types are resisted by many enemies. And oh man, if I had a wish for every enemy that resisted physical damage, I'd have R5 Jade Cutter, or have sold my account for a lot of money. One of Eula's greatest weaknesses is that there are too many enemies in high-level content that just straight up resist physical damage. Ruined guards, ruined graders, ruined hunters, ruined cruisers, ruined destroyers, ruined defenders, all the Boar King, the perpetual mechanical array. It's a lot. And while there are plenty of enemies that have negative resistance to physical damage, those are never usually the big bad bosses of Spiral Abyss. Meanwhile, in Meathead Land, Itto's focus is on Geo damage, which has very few enemies that resist it. In general, this just means that Itto is less likely to have his viability in difficult content be ruined, which means this point goes to Itto, even though we don't know how strong his skills are. This seems like a good time to bring up this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online platform that makes learning and engaging with new ideas easy to get started with. Since I graduated, I've had a lot more free time, and I've wanted to put it to good use by learning new skills. So recently, I've been using all of my free time to take classes on Skillshare. Things like graphic design classes, FL Studio classes for music production, even Jordy V's advanced video editing classes, which have helped me out with Premiere a lot. There's just so many different things that you can do on Skillshare, so many skills to learn. Basically, if there's a skill you want to learn, there's probably something for you on Skillshare. With increased access to technology all over the world, more and more people are able to use the internet as a powerful learning tool. So there has really never been a better time to get started with Skillshare. If you want to learn how to make music, speak another language, edit videos, or create thumbnails like these, definitely check out Skillshare. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so you can start exploring your creativity today. So give it a shot, click the link, you have absolutely nothing to lose and so many skills to gain. Once you're done clicking that link, let's get back to the video. For our third comparison, for 10 points, we'll be looking at team synergies. Eula, being a cryophysical unit, can use most electro or cryo units in her teams, while also being decent with characters that are just good units, like Xingqiu, Bennett, and Jean for example. Some of Eula's top teams include Raiden Sara Diona, Raiden Sara Jean, Fischl Beidou Diona, Fischl Diona Sucrose, and many more. Though no Eula team is top of the meta, there are many different combinations you can run with her that still help her reach her max potential in Spiral Abyss. On Itto's side, we run into the Geo problem. Itto is a defensive Geo carry, and due to Goro being a defense support, you'll need to run Goro with Itto. But to get Goro's full potential, you'll need to run a third Geo unit for his ability that grants bonus Geo damage, which only leaves one more spot for another character, which means that ultimately you can't use reaction-based teams with Itto. This means that Itto and Goro are guaranteed, and only Noelle, Albedo, Ningguang, GeoMC, and Zhongli are left. Noelle ends up being a carry in her burst, so you don't want to use her unless it's purely for shield and heals. Ningguang, Zhongli, and GeoMC don't benefit from Goro as much, which basically just leaves Albedo. Geo teams can be pretty expensive to build, and Goro requiring 3 Geo units is not going to make it much easier. Of course, we don't know exactly what teams will be best for Itto, but we can certainly say that Eula will have more overall team flexibility at the time of release, so these 10 points are going to Eula. Number 4 is going to be about weapons and worth 10 points. The idea here is that one character will have more weapons to choose from or have more free-to-play accessible weapons, and this category easily goes to Eula. Here's why. Itto is a defensive scaling character, which means he can take advantage of the free-to-play weapon White Blind. However, White Blind is not often advised to build over the other top pick, which is Prototype Archaic, because White Blind can only be used most effectively on characters like Noelle, Itto, and sometimes I see people using it on whoever this is. There aren't a lot of options for White Blind, but there are many for other free-to-play craftable options. As far as free-to-play accessibility for weapons, Eula has access to the Fish, Snowtomb Star Silver, or Prototype Archaic, making her options much better. As far as other weapons like Wolf's Gravestone, Song of Broken Pines, and the 6-star weapon Serpent Spine, while they all might be okay on Itto, it's undeniable that Eula can use more of them more effectively. So these 10 points are Eula's. Number 5 is worth 5 points, and it's Field Time. Many Genshin players tend to not like characters who require a set amount of field time because it often restricts what teams can be run to optimize damage. It should come as no surprise that Eula is a pretty selfish carry since her burst takes as long as a trip to the DMV to activate for higher damage, but what about Itto? Well, he has a timed burst window as well. The main difference would be that the impact of Eula's one massive hit at the end feels immaculate. Do you remember that feeling of kissing another person just for the first time? Well, me neither, but I imagine that's what it feels like when you hit your first big number with Eula. But ultimately, both these characters are selfish DPS that need all of your field time, so this one's gonna be a draw. Now we can move on to number 6 for 5 points, which is artifact sets. This section is going to be dedicated to who has more sets they can take advantage of and which are the most resin efficient. And I won't lie, Itto's set options are not looking great. When looking at which sets are best on characters, 2-piece sets being best in slot are often better than a 4-piece set being best because farming 4 pieces of one set can be very difficult. One major issue with Itto is that 2 of his best sets will be the new Opulent Husk set and the Retracing Bolide set, both of which require 4 pieces to take advantage of. He'll be able to use the Archaic Petra 2-piece, but it won't be his best option, and in terms of resin efficiency, the Husk set doesn't look great since a new healing set will not be very commonly used. Meanwhile, Eula can use 4-piece Pale Flame, but for a majority of people, 2-piece Pale Flame and 2-piece Bloodstained will be a better set option. And in addition to that, farming the Pale Flame domain can get you Tenacity of the Millilith pieces, which is a super strong support set given the right teams. When farming Bloodstained, you can also get Noblesse Obliged pieces, and as Noblesse is one of the most overall useful sets in the game, Eula's sets are much more resin efficient to farm for. These 5 points and your resin are going to Eula and defense artifacts. Speaking of defense artifacts, Itto has the advantage in this next category for 10 points, talking about artifact stats. Getting the right set pieces is only half the battle. Or maybe closer to a 10th of the battle. You still need the right stats for your characters. And your odds of getting Copium are the same as always, but Itto can actually use Copium pretty effectively because of his defense scaling. Don't get me wrong, you still want to build him like a DPS with crit stats and all, but it shouldn't take you 6 months to find the right main stat on your Sans. Meanwhile, Eula's main stats are harder to farm for, since defense is more likely to drop and steal substat slots than the good stats. So for this category, Itto is going to be the winner. Now on to number 8 for 5 points, which is Constellation value. Eula's early Constellation value is actually pretty solid. Constellation 1 gives you a decent physical damage buff when you use a Grimheart stacks, and Constellation 2 enables you to easily maintain the full 4-piece Pale Flame set, which will give Eula extra attack in comparison to the standard 2 Bloodstained 2 Pale Flame set. Constellation 3 is an increase to the damage your burst does, which is already a massive chunk of Eula's damage. Constellation 4 and 5 aren't as much value, but Constellation 6 gets whale value for whale spending. Meanwhile, Itto doesn't have his Constellations released yet, so we're going to call this one a draw. The 9th category is going to be in-kit buff and debuff abilities, and no, I don't mean that buff. This was already kind of mentioned before, but physical damage and geo damage bear issues as a result of not getting reactive multipliers. Well, characters often have Ascension passives that buff them in one way or another, and in some cases there are buffs worked into just regular damaging abilities. In Eula's case, she lowers physical and cryo resistance with her elemental skill when held, which increases not only your physical and cryo damage, but also any off-field cryo damage you have active. Unfortunately for Itto though, it's unlikely we'll be seeing any geo resistance shred abilities from him. While self-buffing characters may strongly benefit from their kit when played correctly, resistance shred often ends up being more of a game changer than characters that buff their own stats, unless it's by a massive margin. With that being said, this category is going to go to Eula. The final category is going to be the most important category of them all. When you're picking characters to spend your wishes on, there are plenty of factors that go into your decision, but consider this one the most important. This category is thighs or abs. Alright, so let's get this straight. MiHoYo knew what they were doing when they gave Eula that little pudge. And no, I'm not just referring to the male gaze because let's be honest, everybody loves this, and if you don't, you're lying to yourself. That being said, there are plenty of characters with 7, 8, and 9 out of 10 thighs in Genshin Impact. You could argue that this category is fairly oversaturated, but when have we had men with abs? And I mean real abs. Not just some belly showing, I mean stone cold, rock hard, geo supremacy abs. I know Mr. Morax himself has some, but he's just a tiny bit shy, so Itto is the only fix of abs we'll have for now. When we're just considering the value of thighs versus abs, it's important to see which one is going to be more common, so that way you can go for the rarer one. And fortunately for us, Itto's abs are like a shiny Pokemon. Anyways, after many long nights of pondering, abs are the winner of this category because there is simply not enough competition, awarding Itto 10,000 points, which puts Itto in the lead over Eula. Jokes aside, I think that Eula has more pros to building her than Itto will, but overall, they're both filling the same main DPS slot in your team. My honest opinion is that if you're just looking for an insanely high damaging unit that'll carry you in Abyss, Itto or Eula will do the job, but it's highly likely we'll see Xiao and Ganyu rerun very soon, and those units are much more consistently good across content, so I would wait for them if you're just looking for a strong DPS. Of course, if you're just looking at this patch's banners for a new DPS, Eula will be much easier to build for free-to-play players than Itto, but if you don't care, that's kind of your business. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Whether you are thighs or abs leaning, you are welcome to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We accept everyone over here. And will someone please tell me who this is?